The longest playoff drought in all four major professional sports will continue as today's loss officially marks the 14th straight season of no playoffs for the New York Jets. Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, December 8th. We are just about 10 to 15 minutes removed at the time of this recording from the New York Jets dropping another game to the Miami Dolphins. Their stretch of losing in Miami continues. They haven't won in that building since the final week of 2014. Rex Ryan's last game, Geno Smith perfect passer rating game. And today they got to overtime and the defense got shredded. They fall in this one 32-26. The Jets fall to 3-10 at home on, or 3-10 on the season. They fall to 1-6 on the road. As for the Miami Dolphins, they keep their slim playoff hopes alive to improve to 6-7 on the season while getting to 4-3 at home. The New York Jets stretch of losing since Halloween continues. This is their fourth straight loss. It's crazy. They have not won a game since October. Part of that is, well, they just stink. The other part is they only had 2 games in November with the bye week mixed in there in week 12. But today was another one of these games where 3-9 Jets go into Miami. They haven't had success Miami recently, 2014, like I mentioned, and they found another way to lose, officially eliminating them from the playoffs. And we've known this now for a while that they would not make the playoffs. Today was just official, similar to last week. These last 2 weeks have kind of been the final nail in the coffin to this 2024 Jets season, where last week against Seattle, you blow a 14-point home lead and you clinch your 9th straight losing season, which is the 5th or the 6th longest streak in NFL history. Haven't had a winning season since 2015, the 10-6 year, which ultimately ended in Buffalo with no playoff appearance, as we all know. And in this week, you officially mark another season with no playoffs, going back to 2010, 14 straight years, dropping this one to get to 3-10. So for the tank folks, which, like I said, I'm just broken. I'm numb at this point. This loss as a Jet fan is not even really like you're just so broken. It's you would feel like an overtime loss to the Miami Dolphins would be a whole lot more painful, but at this point in the season, you've got to expect it. I mean, come on now. We knew the minute the Miami Dolphins would win the coin toss. Even the Jets can't even win the coin toss, let alone win a game. They can't even win the coin toss. I mean, that too. They can't win anything. They can't win a coin toss. They can't win a game. They don't know how to win much of anything. But you knew once Miami won that coin toss and the way the Jets defense was playing in the second half, which is what we've seen them do all year, in the little times that they've had leads, they have not been able to hold on to those leads. Multiple times today, they had chances to hold Miami, make some plays, and they couldn't do it. You knew that Miami would drive down and score, and Rodgers and that offense would not get another opportunity, and that is sure enough exactly what happened. 8-play, 70-yard drive, took 3 minutes and 55 seconds, and it was a drive that was dominated by Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith didn't get looked at the entire game. Did not get looked at the entire game. I believe he had 1 target through regulation, and you go into overtime, he has 3 catches for 44 yards, all happen on that one drive, and he scores the game-winning touchdown. So Jonnu Smith, who we talked about going into this game, was a guy to look for. The whole game was not looked at all, which I was surprised Miami didn't look his way one bit. They decided to do that in overtime. We know the Jets, with this current defense, this current scheme, kind of ever since, over the last 4 to 5 years, they've had problems with tight ends. We've known that. Going into this game, you wondered how they would contain Jonnu Smith, and for the most part, it went fine because Miami never looked his way. And then overtime comes around and, they find a way to let Jonnu Smith just dominate and take over that game. and he scores the touchdown. They did the same play 2 times in a row. I think that also perfectly encapsulates where the Jets are this season, is they did the same play twice in a row to start overtime. Both of them resulted in a successful Jonnu Smith play. I believe both of them resulted in not only successful completions, but I believe successful first downs. I know one of them went for the first down. I'm not sure if the other one did. I forget. It just at this point. But obviously, he went down, marched down the field, got Jonnu Smith involved. Yeah, both were. The first one was 20 yards. Second one was 14 yards. So back-to-back first downs, and you knew right from there it was over. And, they got this one to overtime. And that's the crazy part. We talk about this Jets team this season. I mentioned last week how they're the Kansas City Chiefs of losing, right? Ian O'Connor, who wrote the Aaron Rodgers book, posted that on Twitter a couple weeks ago. And it really is the perfect way to describe, right? We could describe the Jets as a bad team. We could describe the Jets as an undisciplined team, all these different ways. But what the New York Jets are in terms of their losing, they are the Kansas City Chiefs of losing. That's what they are. Every week they find different ways to lose, just like the Chiefs every week find new ways to win. Every week the Jets find different ways to lose. This week it was pretty much everybody on your offense. Your offense played well. I mean, they didn't hit 30 points, so that continues. We've played 13 games. We're 14 weeks in. This offense has yet to hit 30 points, so that drought is still happening. But Aaron Rodgers went out there and threw for 339 yards, which was a main talking point the rest of the way here is, would he have a 300-yard game in this season? If this is it for him, would he ever have a 300-yard game in a Jet uniform? Because going into today, Rodgers, his last 300-yard game, which we talked about last Monday after the loss to the Seahawks, was Week 14, December 12th, 2021 against the Bears, where he threw for 341 yards. That happens today. Rodgers throws for 330 plus, 339, and they go to overtime, and they still find a way to lose. Like, I think today was the perfect encapsulation of, it's not like anything specific went wrong for the Jets. I mean, the defense blew up late, no doubt about it. The kick return after the Jets kicked the field goal to get to 26-23, the kick return coverage was awful. It gave Miami very good field position to the point where they didn't need to pick up a whole lot to get Jason Sanders, who is a very good kicker into field goal range, went 4 for 4 today, did mix the extra point, but he's a guy been around for a while. You knew he was probably going to hit that kick. He's a guy that's more than capable of hitting a 50-plus yard kick in a big moment in that game, which is exactly what he did. So you want to maybe point to that, but it wasn't like there was a missed field goal. It wasn't like there was a killer penalty. It was just the Jets. Rodgers threw 300 yards. You saw some good things out of both running backs. Olu played well again. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams both had 100 yards. A lot went well today. A lot did. But they're just a bad football team that just does not know how to win. They just don't. They can't close out games. And today was another example of that. Nothing crazy happened. There wasn't a back-breaking 91-yard pick six like last week. Like I said, there wasn't a missed field goal. There wasn't a killer penalty. And I know Quinnen Williams had the roughing the passer, and I know DJ Reed had a couple penalties as well down the stretch there on that final drive where they were able to make it scored and then got the 2-point. I know there was definitely some penalties, but nothing outrageous, nothing that killed them. Just the defense blew up late. Defense blew up in overtime. And that's kind of been the story of the season. But they're just a bad team that just find ways to lose. This week, it was just a 5-7 Miami team was just a little bit better than them because they know how to win more than the Jets do. This Jets team just does not know how to win. They just don't. And that's why they've got 3 wins, and 2 of them came in the first month of the season. Since September, this team's won 1 game. It came on Halloween, where they played 1 good half of football. I mean, what more needs to be said? What more needs to be said? I'm broken. You're broken. Many other people are broken. They're just a bad team. Not much went wrong. They don't know how to win. They can't win. Defense, whatever it is. Something always blows up. So that's kind of the main takeaway there. The offense, like I said, Rodgers 27 of 39, 339 yards, 8.7 yards per completion. That is by far his highest amount of the season. As mentioned earlier, his first 300-yard game since December of 2021. Week 14, actually. So actually pretty much 3 years ago was the last time on the three-year anniversary here in a way. Week 14 of 2021, week 14 of 2024, we get an Aaron Rodgers 300-yard passing game. So who knew? He was just waiting to turn 41, and he was just waiting to hit week 14 again for himself to have a 300-yard game. Had a touchdown, took 3 sacks, 104.5 passer rating. He looked good. I mean, he looked healthy. It was probably the best he's looked. I'm still not on the bring Aaron Rodgers train. If they would have won today, I'm still not on the bring Aaron Rodgers train. I don't buy into this whole, maybe if you are, today was a good start in terms of this whole final 6-game stretch that we were all talking about going into the Seattle game. That now down the stretch, this final 4-game stretch. I don't buy this whole Aaron Rodgers prove it thing. I think the decision's been made. I mean, I think the new general manager, head coach will obviously have a lot to say, but I think it'll be smart just for both sides to move on. But, I'm going to be honest with my assessment. He played well today. This was probably the best game. You could probably make a case, even though yards-wise and completion percentage-wise, New England, or this game was better than New England. I would probably say New England was his best just because it resulted in a win. He had the 2 touchdowns. He still had the 281 yards. So I would still say New England was probably his best game, but you can make the case this was definitely, in terms of yards, his best game he's had in a Jet. I mean, in terms of yards, this is his best game he's had in 3 years. And he kind of looked like he looked against Seattle in the first half, except he looked that way pretty much the whole game. Even down the stretch, we've talked about Aaron Rodgers a lot this season. Down the stretch, final drive, they were tie game 23-23. They had 4 minutes left. 4:25 was on the clock when Rodgers got ready to roll for that final drive. 11 play, 63-yard drive, got them in the field goal range, scored. Now you can make the case that maybe a touchdown there if you want to get greedy. I'm not going to sit here and do that. I'm not going to be that guy to get greedy for a 3-9 Jet team that say they should have scored. Isaiah Davis run lost 5 yards, and then Rodgers took a 6-yard sack, so it backed up the 3rd and 21. They ended up getting 14 of it back on that Devontae Adams ball down the sideline against Kendall Fuller to get to 4th and 7, pick up 14 of those yards back and get themselves back in the manageable field goal range, which was good. But it was actually one of the only times this year that Rodgers, we've seen 23-23 tie game, whether they've been trailing, tie game, whatever, step up on those moments and go down and drive and get points. Last week we talked about 0-5. Had a chance last week to do it, couldn't do it. Had a chance against Indy, Denver, New England, Minnesota. We've seen it time and time again. This time actually came through and was able to get points. I thought the young players looked good. Braylon Allen, I thought, had a really good day. It was nice to see him get involved in the passing game. 11 carries, 43 yards on the ground, 4 receptions, 38 yards from a receiving perspective. So that was really good. Isaiah Davis, after having a receiving touchdown last week, scored his first rushing touchdown of his career. So back-to-back weeks with a touchdown for Davis. He looked really, really good today. Again, this point in the season, you want to evaluate some of these young guys. It's gotten to the point of the year where you're starting to look at individuals more so the team. And you were looking at Braylon Allen today. You were looking at Isaiah Davis, 2 guys that you knew were going to get a lot more reps with Breece Hall out. And I thought both guys looked really good. I thought both guys played really well. Despite the loss, where we were at in the season, if you're a Jets fan, you've got to take that as a positive. I'm not just going to sit here and sit in a cesspool of negativity. We know this team sucks. I'm not just going to sit here and keep complaining about it. We know it. So try and look at the positives and see that both those guys went out there, looked pretty good, had a couple nice runs. Between the two, 21 carries for 83 yards, 4 yards a carry, and a touchdown. Not a bad day for 2 rookies commanding the backfield from those 2 guys. Davis also had 3 catches for 27 yards. So pretty strong day for those guys. Davis, too. I think Davis the last 2 weeks really impressed. I would like to see more Davis. Nothing against Breece Hall, but you're 3-10. You're officially eliminated. If Breece Hall's knee is not 100%, do not send him out there. Because the backfield right now is perfectly fine in terms of you don't you're 3-10. You don't need to keep setting Brees out there, risk an injury that could affect him next year. You're 3-10. Play the young guys, keep it rolling. If Brees Hall's not 100%, I don't think it's a problem to run Allen and Davis out there next week and keep rolling out those guys. You know, Garrett, 7 receptions, 114 yards. Devontae Adams, 9 catches, 109 yards. A touchdown for him. By far his best game as a Jet. Garrett, I mean, we talked about what going into this one, had 763 yards, was, you know, I believe, pull my notes out here from the game preview. 763 was 341, I think, away from 1,000. I believe that was for Garrett. And I believe it was, let's see, 237 away from, or maybe not. I don't even know. I don't know. He came into this one with, he was about 237 away from 1,000. So he's obviously gets a lot closer to that. 7 receptions, went into this one with 74 on the season, was 26 away from 100 to become the second best in franchise history, and the second Jet receiver in franchise history to hit 100, only behind Brandon Marshall, of course, in 2019 or 2015 rather. So both those numbers continue to climb. Garrett with the 100-yard gain, that's his 4th of the season. So good day for him. He's a beast. He's fun to watch. You know, these games get hard to watch. Today's wasn't bad. Today's was actually somewhat offensively. It was kind of enjoyable. I mean, I don't want to say it was enjoyable, but it was at least entertaining, I guess. There's nothing enjoyable about watching a team watching a team where on the scoreboard it says 3-9. But in terms of the offense and the young guys, that part was actually entertaining and good to see. So that was it offensively. They played as well as they probably could. This is what you're going to get out of this offense. Considering they were without Brees Hall, Rodgers goes out there, throws for 339 yards. They put up 26 points. It should be good enough to win. Just where this defense is at and this team as a whole and the coaching and everything that's gone on this year, this is not a game that the Jets win in 2024. It's just not. Maybe it's a game they win next year. Only time will tell. But unfortunately, it's just not a game they win this year. And I think we've all got to come to the realization of that. Defensively, I will say this about the offense. Jeremy Ruckert stinks. And I don't want to be, it's a cool story. I get it. Long Island kid, all that stuff. He stinks. Wide open pass he dropped today. He is awful. Hasn't been good his first 2 years in the league. Year 1 didn't barely play. Last year played a little bit, but didn't do a whole lot. This year is playing more, not getting many looks, but when he gets looks, he doesn't do anything with them. He's not good. He's just not good. He was a 3rd-round flyer, day 2 pick. That's just not good. And there's a chance you look at this Jets tight end room right now, and the active tight ends, Conklin, Ruckert, and Yeboah, none of them are here next year. And that might not be for the worst. Conklin's not bad, but he's not going to, I don't foresee them bringing back what will be a 30-year-old Tyler Conklin next year. His contract expires at the end of the season. Ruckert, you can't bring back. Yeboah, he doesn't do anything. He's just Yeboah is just a training camp darling. Every year he has a good training camp, does nothing in the regular season, barely plays in the regular season. This tight end room needs a complete overhaul. And I've said this for years now, really since Dustin Keller. This team never has, since Dustin Keller, just competent tight end play. I mean, I guess you could say Conklin's average. He has dropped off this year, which is kind of surprising considering he was better with worse quarterback play. As much as Rodgers isn't playing up to his ability, he's better than Simeon, Boyle, and Zach. But even with that being the case, Conklin's numbers this year are taking a dip. He's not going to come back next year. I don't see the Jets re-signing him. Ruckert stinks. He is awful. He's not any good. He needs to be let go. No more of this hometown bull crap. He's not good. Move on. You need an overhaul at the tight end. You just do. You need to find every team in the NFL. Heck, watch Jonnu Smith. And I'm not talking, the Dolphins aren't some juggernaut, but at least they're in the playoff race. Jonnu Smith right now has been one of the best tight ends in the NFL this season. Statistically, we talked about it. He went into this game fourth amongst tight ends in yards, receptions, and tied for fifth in touchdowns among all tight ends. He's top 5 among tight ends this year. He's a top 5 tight end this year statistically, especially over the last 3 weeks. You look at all the good teams, or all the even just average teams, they all have tight end play. The Jets, nowhere to be found. Ruckert, terrible. The drops, just some games are just a complete non-factor. Even when he's out there, he's not good. Move on, overhaul it. That's the way I view it. That's the offense. You move on to the defense in this one. Like I said, they blew it. They blew it late. 23-15 had a chance to kind of close the game out. They don't do that. You go into overtime. They couldn't stop a nosebleed there. So defense this season, it's so crazy disappointing. I don't know. It might be one of the most painful things. I don't know everything's been painful. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's like worth me sitting here going through a list of the most painful things that's happened this year. But just for me, and Rodgers not being Rodgers is certainly painful. Just because we all thought that, just because we all bought in. But I think out of this whole season, like as disappointing as it's been, one of the most disappointing things I think has just been the regression of this defense. Just because of the fact that for 2 years now, whether it was, even 2022 and then even this year, but more so, or even last year, more so last year, for an entire year and a half, I would say. We were talking about this defense playing with leads. Last year in that Texans game, they were all over CJ Stroud. The offense, Zach had the game of his life out of the middle of nowhere. And they found a way to just dominate. And we were all saying, with this offense, all that stuff. The offense today was good enough. It's been good enough at certain points of the season. Good enough's not good enough, though, if that makes sense. But like the defense, so many times this year, they've blown games. And there's also been a handful of times where Rodgers has also blown games and not executed himself. So that's got to be one of the most painful things. We talked about all this time. Jets defense plays with the lead. Even 2022, in some of those games where the Jets had bad losses, whether it was the Jacksonville loss, you had that awful New England loss with the punt return, where the defense would just dominate the entire game. Offense would do nothing. Now, the offense today did something. Defense blows it. Many times this year, have a lead, defense blows it. And sometimes it's the offense making a back-breaking mistake that kind of, like last week with the whole 91-yard pick six. That mistake feels like just sucked the energy out of the whole team. But that's got to be one of the most frustrating developments, is this defense finding ways to blow games. Sherwood had a crazy day from a tackle perspective. 18 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, pass defended. Eccles, I thought, was decent, solid today. I had one drive was all over Tyreek Hill. He had a pass defended. Eccles he was about as good as you could expect, right? A backup coming in for Sauce. He stepped up. He's a very solid depth piece that I would not be opposed to bringing back next year. A guy that one of those top corners goes down, he can instantly step in. And heck, even maybe next year, depending on what all happens, DJ Reed probably doesn't return. Eccles might be fighting for potentially one of those starting spots next year, assuming it'll be just Sauce and Carter, with DJ Reed most likely exiting in free agency. So pressure-wise, they got no pressure. And Javon Kinlaw, why the heck is he even still on this team? The second play of the game, Javon Kinlaw penalty. Second play of the game, I said to myself, this game's over. This is typical Jets. We should have known right from there. I mean, I thought the Jets were going to get blown out. 27-17 was my pick. I guess that's not getting blown out, but I thought they were going to lose this game by more than 2 scores, and they didn't. I did not expect this game to go to overtime. But right off the bat, they had 10 penalties saved for 83 yards, but right off the bat, the freaking Javon Kinlaw penalty. Right off the second play of the game. Fans were still getting to their seats. And we already had a Javon Kinlaw stupid play. Michael Clemens, I say it every week. I don't know what the heck he does out there. I don't even know if you want to call it cardio because he just stands up. He doesn't even move. He just stands and like watches. He stands up and gets pushed off the ball. So I don't even know if that's cardio. I don't know what that is, but it's not good enough. And it's not NFL roster worthy. That's for sure. But somehow he's still here. Javon Kinlaw and Michael Clemens probably are the two most frustrating pieces of this defense all year. And the unfortunate part of it all is we saw this from a while now from Clemens. The coaching staff kept telling us, no, don't worry, Clemens is okay. And Javon Kinlaw is another one of those Douglas free agent signings that just completely blew up in his face. And it's another reminder of how far this defensive line has fallen from what it was last year and even the year before that. Thank you, Joe Douglas, for doing that. That was like his parting gift. So, no pressure at on Tua today. No pressure. Blew it. Not much more needs to be said about the defense. There really isn't. There's just not. You want to give you the positives? I thought Echols stepped in and played well. Sherwood, I think it's a solid piece. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back. Other than that, DJ Reed had a couple penalties, didn't have a great day. I'm sure the refs were ready to pull out the flag on him too with the social media last week. They were not afraid to flag DJ Reed today. Not that the calls I thought were bad. I'm just saying anything he did today, DJ Reed was going to get flagged for it. Chuck Clark was on Tyreek Hill in the end zone on the, I believe it was the touchdown when they drove down. Mismatch there. Somehow, Jets find themselves in a mismatch. Chuck Clark's not going to do anything against Tyreek Hill. That happens. No pressure. So that's where we're at. That's where we stand with the defense. I mean, you just look at the names that are out there right now. Some of the names on defense, right? Eric, Javon Kinlaw, right? Isaiah Oliver. I mean, there's just like no names. Hassan Reddick's a non-factor. Quinn Williams has no help in the interior there. Will McDonald had the one tip. Will McDonald, didn't have a sack today, didn't do a whole lot, but he did have the one tip on the Jonnu Smith ball. It's just such a train wreck. So that's about it. I will also say this. I guess this is the negative part of the episode because it really was. The offense didn't play bad today. Everything else really didn't show up. Xavier Gibson, what are you doing, man? There was 2 punts today. He should have just fair caught. Instead, he tried to return them and didn't do anything with them. Xavier Gibson, they got to figure out punt returner in the offseason. And this also brings up my point. I talked about the whole return after they kicked the field goal to take the lead. Brant Boyer has survived 3 coaching changes, or rather 2. Well, no, 3. He was originally under the Bowles regime, hired in 2016. He's been here since 2016. He survived Bowles getting fired. He survived Gaze getting fired. Not only that, but he also survived Saleh getting hired, right? He survived that. He's been here since 2016. He cannot come back. Special teams has been a strength for the last year was actually a strength. Previous years, not so much. You could have maybe made the case they could have fired him previously when they had some of those kicking problems. But it's been a strength. It was definitely a strength last year. This year, it is not a strength. Whether it's punt return, whether it's kick coverage that we saw there late in the game, the fact that the field goal now, Andrews Carlson been very, very good. Today had a good day. 4 for 4 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points was perfect. Maybe he's their kicker moving forward. I wouldn't, right now, he's kicking, he's making them. But in terms of everything else, in terms of cleaning house, like if you're going to blow it up, first of all, everybody's got to leave. But Brant Boyer, I don't think could survive another job. Kicker was good today. Now everything else is falling off. Punt return, kick coverage, all that stuff. By the way, Jets right now, 3-10 on the season. 7th pick in the draft right now, according to Tankathon. So they're tied strength of schedule with Tennessee. Obviously, they have the tiebreaker because they beat them. Tennessee has the tiebreaker over the Jets because the Jets beat them. Tennessee, however, lost. Jacksonville beat Tennessee today. So that means next week's really the Tank Bowl. If the Jets lose next week to Jacksonville, that could have massive implications on where they're picking in the 2025 NFL draft. So there's your tank update for the Jets, sitting at 3-10. 4 straight officially eliminated. Definitely time to look ahead to April. So that'll do it. Another episode in the books, episode 442. Appreciate you all so much for tuning in. Appreciate you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow talking, recapping this one. I'm sure we'll get maybe in some draft talk, anything else that comes out. So the tank continues. The losing continues. 9 years, losing seasons, 14 years, no playoffs. Life of a Jet fan. And still 4 games left. So that'll do it. We'll catch you tomorrow. Appreciate you all so much. As always, JETS, 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 Jets.